Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Two Stories in Tech podcast. My name is Eddie Bader, and today I'm here with Manish Bhartia, partner of Think AI Consulting, Brian Enuma, president of Strategic Systems Group, and Eric Klaus, CEO of PartnerSource Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about modern business applications and how the process will change in the next 3 to 5 years. So my first question to the group is, what is a modern business application?
Wow, that's a great question, Eddie. So, when we talk about modern business applications, we've really seen an evolution in the industry. We used to refer to a lot of things like CRM or customer relationship management systems, enterprise resource planning or ERP solutions, MRP solutions. We used to have all of these different industry terms for different types of business applications, but that's really evolved in today's world. And when we look at modern business applications today, they tend not to be so siloed into just one thing.
So do you have some examples of how these have become more collaborative or interdependent, or even if some of them have, for lack of a better word, cannibalized or integrated themselves, where it's, one package does all of these things?
Yeah, I mean, some of probably the biggest names that people think of in these solutions are really diversifying what we see, what we think about in the way of functionality in the applications. So if you look at a solution, a company like Salesforce, Salesforce has certainly been known and continues to be known for their CRM solution, customer relationship management. But if you look at what they've done as an organization, as a business applications platform, they've really diversified far beyond just what we would look at as the realm of pure CRM functionality. They've expanded into many other areas. They have data solutions today. They have marketing automation solutions today. They have enterprise resource planning. They have an accounting solution, Financial Force. They have a lot of other solutions that are part of their ecosystem today that really extend above and beyond what is just pure CRM. Other organizations are similar. Oracle's acquisition of NetSuite. The NetSuite solution is a diverse portfolio of solutions that provides enterprise resource planning. It provides that accounting backend, but it also has a CRM element to it. They also have an e-commerce capability as well, and they sell it as a complete business application platform. And of course, Microsoft has done much the same with their Dynamics 365 platform. So they've got a CRM element to that, the Dynamics 365 customer engagement solution. They've got enterprise resource planning solutions, their Dynamics 365 finance and operations solution for the enterprise class, or their Business Central solution for the small and mid-market type of organizations. They have their HR Dynamics 365 talent solution. So they've really expanded what is available. All of these organizations have in the way of business applications today, and it's not just one thing. They're really looking at how, with their solutions, they can help a business owner, a CEO, run their business holistically from within one platform.
Well, that's really cool, and it's a lot to think about. And given that, I wanted to ask Brian a question here, is that there's so many buzzwords, and there's a lot of marketing built around digital transformation or modern business applications. Can you break that down specifically on the digital transformation as it applies to business applications. What, as a small or mid-sized business owner, should I be thinking about? Should I be looking about? How do I know when I've outgrown my current system? And how do I know that I'm choosing the right system to migrate to? And then take that same example and kind of give us an idea of what that would look like from a mini to micro business to small business, and then the transition from small to mid-size and maybe mid-size to enterprise, because each of those different steps takes certain things into consideration. The enterprise folks aren't dealing with the same issues that the small and mid-sized companies are dealing with. So if you could kind of like walk us through that and kind of help us understand what we need to identify to be successful when we select this modern business application.
It's a really good question, Eddie. Thank you. And maybe let's speak to this notion of digital transformation first. There are a lot of systems today that are essentially run on premises, and we see lots of clients that have systems in a closet someplace sometimes, or in a computer room at best. But there's a little bit of thought that has to be taken in terms of how to deploy a modern business application. On premises is certainly an option, and maybe reserved for the largest of enterprises that have the resources to maintain a large data center. For smaller organizations, it might be a better choice to be in a cloud scenario. So the things that Eric mentioned, NetSuite, for example, is entirely cloud-based. Dynamics 365 Business Central, also very much cloud-based. So one of the large advantages of having software deployed like that is that you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. All the infrastructure is basically taken care of for you. The other advantage in that scenario is that the software updates basically take place for you as well. So sometimes it's a little bit of a surprise when something changes, but those software updates basically get handled for you as opposed to you having to go through the update process yourself. You asked a question about outgrowing a system. So one of the things that seems to pop up fairly frequently is that organizations have run for years and sometimes decades on QuickBooks and spreadsheets, and that's a pretty common way to go for us, a very small organization. As organizations grow, that scenario does not fit very well in the long run. So a lot of times there's an opportunity for companies like that to consider something more cohesive than QuickBooks and spreadsheets. If for example, the QuickBooks database gets to be very, very large, and there are some limitations on that size. If there are lots and lots of spreadsheets, also a good indicator that maybe a modern business application is the right choice. If there have been situations where those spreadsheets have spit out the wrong data because of a formula error, maybe even more so an opportunity to consider a modern business application. In choosing the right system, as you noted, could be different for different sizes of organizations. For example, a very small organization could choose something relatively simplistic, say QuickBooks Online at the very, very minimal. Organizations that have some inventory requirements as well could use something like QuickBooks and Fishbowl together. So that's also a pretty common deployment. As companies get a little bit larger in size, maybe that sort of scenario is not quite the way they should go, and they should think about something a little bit more robust. For example, NetSuite, as Eric mentioned, would be a reasonably good choice. Also, Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, 365 Business Central would also be a good choice for sort of a mid-range type of organization. Some of that decision-making might revolve around the complexity of the business and perhaps the industry that the business is in. And that might provide some guidance in terms of which software selection process might be the most advantageous. In very large organizations, large enterprises, for example, there is an argument to do something more robust. And as I said, large organizations have the wherewithal to run that equipment themselves and keep that software installed on premises. There are some organizations that are a little bit more forward thinking, and rather than having it on premise, they have used a cloud solution like Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations to run a very large organization. And I think that makes sense for the very, very largest of companies. One of the things that large organizations do have difficulties with is reporting. And I think that one of the things that they need to consider in conjunction with the application is business intelligence.
Those are all great points, Brian. Thank you so much for that. Speaking of business intelligence, it's another one of those catchphrases or jargon words that get used in technology and especially in marketing. But Manish, your company one of their focuses is business intelligence. Can you tell us how, well, first, what it is, and secondly, how businesses of any size can actually use that to their advantage and how they would do so? Maybe give us an example of some of the things you worked on and it's how it's changed or transformed the business that you provided it for.
Eddie, thank you. So business intelligence, the use of data within your organization for business productivity or business improvement is called business intelligence. So in the traditional way, you would always have an Excel report or some kind of report which you can use to make business decisions. So that act of using the data to make intelligent business decision will be called business intelligence. Now, coming back to why people would need business intelligence or reporting. When people are trying to figure it out why things are going wrong or why things are working, it's very hard to find the trend. So as long as you have the data tells you the story, like, okay, these are the reasons where we are unable to make our quota in the sales quota or unable to make our numbers, or these are the things we are doing right, which is actually helping us achieve those goals. And that's where the data can provide you the real facts to make decisions, and that makes a company be more productive. One of the example I want to cite is there was the situation where this was a retail client in the mall. They had a store, but they also had the online store. So they were trying to figure it out for the holidays. Can we ramp up the employees in the mall so that we can serve more customers? Because there will be more foot traffic in the store. Can we sell more merchandise? So they did increase the number of employees, but it was reverse, meaning even though there was more people in those holidays days, the sale did not go up. The sale went up in the online store. So because of the data, they were able to figure it out that there is a foot traffic, but people are just there to see the new fashion or the fashion trends or new style of clothing, but they were still shopping online. So mall became more like a hanging place or gathering place, but all the shopping was happening online. So that is one of the example where the data was able to tell the right story. Now in future, they can make sure that the store in the mall still has all the good merchandise and is displaying right kind of clothing, but they can put more money towards making the seamless experience in the web so that people can buy stuff and get more referral, like suggestions on buying more stuff if you buy one clothing. So that is one example of it. I think business intelligence is just a new name for reporting. We do a lot of reporting. Anytime we are doing a custom programming or different enterprise integration, whether it's a ERP system, patient management system, HR system, at the end, the business user are looking for reports or kind of results in report format, so they can make some decisions.
No, that's a great point. And so I have a small follow-up to that. Given the fact that so much of these implementations or these migrations actually end up coming, the most important part is actually the data you take out, that reporting piece, that dashboard with business intelligence built in.
All
Do you
right.
think that should be a priority, at least on the list of considerations when a company moves over? So what data they're capturing and how they want to see it, kind of this philosophy of beginning with the end in mind. Do you recommend that for companies who are looking to make this transition?
Yeah, I think it is not only in case of business intelligence. I would say in any kind of software product or any kind of new initiative, it's always good to have clarity on what you want, because I'll just do a sidebar here, because we have seen if the communication is very good during the meeting, initial meeting, and during the weekly meetings, then we know the project is going to be successful. And communication is always good when we have clarity of what we are trying to achieve as an end goal. So whether it's a business intelligence application, it's a mobile application, a web application, as long as we have clarity, it is always a good outcome. So I would always vouch for, let's build a simple mock-up for the dashboard or a report, what you're looking for, and then let's talk about how much effort is required to achieve that.
That's some great information. And the last thing I'd like to ask, and I'm going to pose this to all three of you, is that as a company, especially as a small company, small companies typically have a lot of workarounds. They've been doing the same thing for years. This is the way we've always done it, is a quote you often hear. But the other thing is, when I need to make a transition to a new program, it's a little bit painful, especially from a financial perspective. Is there some kind of rule of thumb that you would use? So if my company is, between this range and this range of revenue, I should set aside maybe this percentage of my total revenue to use on technology or to upgrade my business applications. Is there any kind of measurement that businesses, obviously a little bit different for enterprise, but especially small, medium businesses, is there any kind of marker you can give them to identify, hey, if you're at this level, you should probably be putting 3% of your total revenue away for, upgrades to your systems or migration project to a new ERP system, things of that nature. Do you have some insight you could share on that?
Wow, that's a tough question, Eddie, because it varies so much from company to company, and it really depends on what their growth strategy is, what their overall strategy is from a business standpoint, and where they are in that cycle. So we've worked with clients who are coming from, I guess I'll say, by way of an example, we worked with a company that was a manufacturer of food and beverage products. And when we went in the door to that organization for the first time, they literally had one computer in the entire building. Everything, though, was paper-based. They had fantastically good paper-based processes for manufacturing, for distribution, for accounting, for sales order processing, for everything that the business needed to do. It was just that, the business had been around for over 40 years. And when they started the businesses, they started everything in paper-based. and they ran the company exactly that way for many, many years. And so when we came in to bring in some technology solutions, including bringing things like email to the organization, it was in some respects maybe a revolution for the company to bring it from the 1970s maybe to the 2000s. But at the same time, they had very, very good processes. And so bringing those processes into a technology solution was relatively, I'll say, relatively easy. Other organizations that we've worked with, a big chunk of the effort that we go into for the organization is around the business processes, about developing and documenting the business processes for the organization. Sometimes they have processes, but those processes are not good practices. They do things because maybe it's just what they thought they needed to do, but it's not a best practice, and we can sometimes show them a better way to do things. So it really varies, and it's really hard, I think, to put a benchmark of a percentage on there, because it depends on where on that spectrum the organization is as they're going through it. So I don't know if I can, pick a number from that standpoint. I think more importantly, the organization has to ask itself, A, what are we able to invest in this? We see that technology solutions and automation can dramatically help a lot of organizations, and arguably help smaller organizations disproportionately than larger organizations. They can help a small organization be more competitive, to be more lean than a larger organization. And so the advantages from a technology standpoint for a smaller organization in many cases are easier to identify. We worked with an organization at one point, for example, where they were a organization, they were a manufacturer. They also sold their products through large distribution organizations. Their customers were Amazon and Walmart and Macy's and these types of large organizations. And when we met with them originally, they said to us, we're using EDI to communicate our orders. And if you're not familiar with EDI, it's a standardized solution for communicating things like orders, order statuses between organizations. But when we looked at what they were doing with EDI, what they had effectively done was thrown bodies in the organization at this. They had basically hired on one person for each of these large retail organizations that they were dealing with. And that person was responsible for going onto a web portal of some kind, pulling those orders, and then manually entering them into their sales order processing system, their accounting system. And then once those orders went through their internal processes, updating the information manually back to the retailers. And at the point that we engaged with them, they had over 24 people who were responsible for doing this. We looked at bringing in a technology solution that could automate that. And the cost on that solution was not, I guess I'll say, not inexpensive. It was probably about $100,000 solution. But the cost that they were spending on labor for manually doing all of that was, as I said, much, much more above and beyond that. So from the organization standpoint, we were able to provide a better experience back for their primary customers, these large retail organizations, through automation. We were also able to save the organization a bunch of money in the process of going through all of this, and at the end of the day, provide a simplified, better solution for the organization that gave them more information, more data, and allowed them to grow and expand. And the last time that I checked with them, they had more than doubled in size They were working with over 50 retail organizations at that point in time. So those are the kinds of things that we can see that can happen when we bring the right solutions in. And the organizations make the right investments to help them position themselves for future growth. So it's hard to necessarily come up with one number, but I think the organization needs to look at itself and ask, are we doing the things that are the best practices? And if you don't know, and this is where I think kind of the rubber meets the road for a lot of organizations, maybe we're not sure if we're doing the right thing. And if that's the case, then bring in some people who have that kind of experience, who've worked with other organizations, who maybe have some experience with other technology solutions, who can look at what they're doing and provide some perspective, maybe how other organizations who might be similar to them are doing things.
I agree with Eric that there's a time where it depends upon the organization. And I think that one of the questions that you asked, Eddie, was about percentage of revenue. So let me make a comment about percentage of revenue. And I think Eric's correct. It's hard to estimate from a technology perspective what the percentage of revenue is or should be that's appropriate. So I think that there's an element of cost that pretty much happens no matter what size organization you're thinking about. So that therefore the percentage of revenue sometimes is not a reasonable way to estimate. Just in very kind of ballpark numbers, there are going to be costs for hardware possibly, unless you use an infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, in which case there's a subscription. There's going to be a cost for software initially, or in a software as a service model, a monthly subscription as well. And I think the part that is most difficult to estimate is the internal time. So the people within the organization who have to implement the software and use it later on are going to spend a significant part of their day putting the software in place. And that's a little bit tougher to estimate. So from a standpoint of hardware, for example, or cloud infrastructure, it could be anywhere from, say a few hundred to a few $1,000s per month. The same for software. Depending upon the number of users, it could also be, say $100 a user. So again, a few thousand to maybe 10,000 a month. But the internal time for implementation, that's a little bit tougher to estimate. I think that we probably have seen organizations expend, say 30% of their time, maybe up to 50% of their time, getting the software into place. And that has a significant cost as well.
So one final thought, and just a quick 15 to 20 seconds from each of you. With the advent of cloud and the ubiquity of technology, the once thought to be enterprise solutions are now available to small and mid-sized businesses, as well as even mini and micro businesses. If you were in that position, mini or micro, small to mid-size, what is the one recommendation, if they're not already doing it, that you would suggest a company takes on in terms of modern business applications, something that maybe they only thought was previously reserved for enterprise type companies, or at least consumed at an enterprise price tag?
Eddie, this is Manish. So I will highlight the importance of choosing an ecosystem. So whether you are in Google, whether you are in Microsoft, Amazon, thinking long term and choosing one ecosystem does help, because what happened is if you just go with a one application kind of cloud solution, you'll be later realizing that you have to expand in different areas, and then you may be missing out the saving in future. So I would just highlight that when you're choosing, look at the ecosystem, what that ecosystem provides, and then choose an application which is fulfilling need right now. But in the long run, you will be in that ecosystem and growing within the cloud applications.
If I was going to pick one thing for a small to mid-size organization, the thing that I would pick is to begin with looking at their sales and marketing processes. We know that for most small and mid-sized organizations, their single biggest challenge in most cases is sales and marketing. It's the fight to stay alive. And a lot of the time what we find are the folks who start a business tend to be good at something operational, I guess I'll say. Whether they have some expertise in manufacturing and they figured out they could go start a business manufacturing something, or they had some expertise in, it could be legal, it could be accounting, it could be, virtually anything. But typically, the element that they're not really good at is the sales and marketing piece. That's the single biggest weakness. And so the first thing that I would suggest for them is to look at what their sales and marketing processes are or should be. As I said before, have somebody come in and provide some guidance. Reach out to someone who has expertise in that area. Reach out and engage with some of the free resources. If you're still at the micro biz standpoint where perhaps you're going to struggle to pay for that, there are resources out there like the small business development centers like SCORE, who provide workshops and consulting around some of these things to begin to help them provide and develop some best practices for their own internal organization. And then as they grow, or if they've gotten to the point where maybe they do have some of those best practices in their organization on the sales and marketing side, then they can start to look at tools like customer relationship management systems and marketing automation tools to help them grow their business at that point. But I always look at it from the standpoint of what are the processes that you have in your business, what are they, or what should they be? Look at some kind of perspective on what are best practices that other businesses are doing that are enabling them to be successful, and how can I leverage that in my business?
Well, that's wonderful insight. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the True Stories of Tech podcast. Hope to see you next time. Have a wonderful day.